Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for this side event of the Executive Committee, and because we like acronyms, we say the ExCom. My name is Leanne Roper. I hail from the beautiful island of Jamaica. I'm also one of the co-chairs for the ExCom, and I am very happy to be joining you today and to be your moderator for this side event. Entering the room, you may have had a chance to see a slideshow being projected on the screens. In the run-up to the side event, we have gathered photo messages answering the question, what actions would help countries address loss and damage? What you have seen are some that we have collated. And while the answers vary, they all unequivocally show what we already know. One, that the issue of loss and damage is one of growing urgency. And two, that there is a strong appetite for solutions and action. Our side event today, moving forward, presenting the work of the WIM ExCom and its 5 expert groups, will focus both on showcasing the progress in the implementation of the work plan of the WIM ExCom and its expert groups. But also, this side event is a space to discuss the opportunities and entry points for a broad range of stakeholders to contribute to the upcoming activities of the expert groups of the WIM ExCom. Before doing so, we will also have the opportunity to hear from 3 distinguished speakers who are also joining me on the platform. They will share their views on loss and damage from a national and regional perspective. Today, we are joined by His Excellency Dr. Leopo Tandi Dorji. I really hope I'm getting your name correctly. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bhutan and Chair of the National Environment Commission of Bhutan. Also, Ambassador Courtney Rattray, High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, and Ms. Heike Hen, I hope I got that correctly, Director for Climate and Energy, Sustainable Urban Development, Environment, and Commissioner for Climate Policy and Climate Financing at the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. I would like to start by inviting our first speaker, His Excellency, Dr. Dorji, to address us. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to apologize that I'm not the Minister for Foreign Affairs. He could not make it to the conference. I'm the Minister for Agriculture and Forests of the Royal Government of Bhutan, and my name is Ishepenjo. I'm pleased to be able to join you here today to share perspective from Bhutan as you showcase the work of Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism. Bhutan is a small landlocked, very fragile mountain ecosystem and least developed country located in the eastern Himalayas. Bhutan is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, and the losses are severe, damages are irreparable. Our development activities are guided by the philosophy of cross-national happiness, balancing socio-economic development with the environment and culture conservation. Bhutan has the highest environmental credentials, thanks to our kings, and the credentials, the conservation commitment in Bhutan is legally binding. Today, the actual forest cover is 71%, with 51% of the land area protected as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and biological corridors. Our main source of energy is renewable run-of-the-river hydropower systems. We are not only carbon neutral, but carbon negative, and Bhutan has committed to remain carbon neutral for all times to come. Despite these efforts, we are extremely vulnerable to impacts of climate change and suffer the most due to high dependence of our population on the agriculture and significant role of run-of-river hydropower for economic development. Already, even at just 1 degree of warming, the impacts are devastating. This year alone, across our region, we are grappling with unusually heavy monsoon rains, the worst seen in the decades. Last month, weeks of downpours caused floodings and landslides in our country, killing people, affecting lives and livelihoods, damaging numerous infrastructures like roads, bridges across the country, and losing all our rice harvests to the downpour. Further, the assessment carried out by the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, the ICMOD, tells us that Hindu Kush Himalayan glaciers will melt by 1/3, even if the global temperature rise is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And in such scenario, the warming will likely be at least 0.3 degrees Celsius higher in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. The report on the inventory of these glaciers from the region shows that many of these glaciers are considered large enough to cause serious damage downstream once they burst out. This means millions of our people who rely on these glaciers for drinking water, sanitation, agriculture, and hydropower will be exposed to climate-induced calamities such as floods, landslides, droughts, heat waves, tropical cyclones, irreversible biodiversity loss, and many more. Other slow onset events due to land degradation, biodiversity loss, glacier melting, desertification are beginning to cause impact, but there is limited knowledge and understanding how to tackle these challenges. Therefore, the work of both the expert group on slow onset events and the expert group on non-economic losses can help us to begin to understand these impacts. Further, technical and financial support are crucial to actually address these impacts. The executive committee and its expert groups are an important foundation, and we are pleased that this foundation is being strengthened with the addition of 3 new groups. Thank you, and I would like to, I look forward to hearing updates from the experts and the WIM ExCom members. Thank you, and tashtele.
We thank you very much for your remarks, and we appreciate that it's a very busy time, so we thank you for joining us on behalf of the Minister. I will now invite Ambassador Rattray to take the floor and to bring remarks. Perhaps we could make them feel welcomed.
Perhaps you could make me feel welcome. Don't worry, I feel welcome without the clapping. I'm Courtney, and I hail from the same part of the world, the same country as our moderator, Leanne. I don't know if you hear this similarity in the accents. But let me just say, acknowledge our fellow panelists, Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a real pleasure for me to be here. Although I do think that most of us would wish that we weren't meeting under such dire, indeed urgent circumstances. And I also want to just place on record my thanks to the city of Glasgow for hosting us. I mean, I think Glasgow can be characterized as a mid-sized city in the United Kingdom. And so to play host to such a large number of persons coming in from overseas, I think somebody told me that there were 25,000 of us here during these 2 weeks. So obviously the citizens of Glasgow have had to make way to accommodate us, and I really want to place on record my thanks to this city for doing so. You know, the recent working group 1, that report that they came out of the IPCC's 6th assessment, it affirms that it is unequivocal that human influence is responsible for the observed global warming. I mean, you would think that this is received wisdom. There's still a lot of climate skeptics out there. That report, that 6th assessment report, finds that global warming will continue to increase at least until the mid-century under all emissions scenarios that they contemplated. And with this, what will we see? Well, we are in for continued heat waves. Heavy precipitation has greeted us when we all first arrived in Glasgow. Droughts and intense tropical cyclones. And so the issue of loss and damage from climate change is not a matter of when for many vulnerable countries and their communities. We as somebody from a SIDS, from a small island developing state, we are experiencing this now. And you know, as I had occasion to say in the days leading up to this conference, it is house on fire time. You know, if we were in a fire station, this would be a 5-alarm fire. The alarm bells would be ringing off their hook. And we as small island developing states have been saying this for many years, unheeded. It's just about now that I'm beginning to sense that people are listening and waking up to what we on the front lines have been saying. And what do I mean when we say we're on the front lines? I mean that small island developing states are the early warning system for the global community. All present projections state that the impacts of climate change on lives and livelihoods in the most vulnerable nations. And here I'm not just talking about the SIDS, I'm talking about the least developed countries. There are 46 of them. And the landlocked developing countries, there are 32 of those. The impacts on their lives and their livelihoods is only set to worsen. And this comes against the backdrop of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, as if it couldn't get any worse, which has put in stark relief the interconnected nature of risk and vulnerabilities. And if you ever have occasion to wonder what is the connection between the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, we'll just consider that for most developing countries, there's limited fiscal space for them to spend on public education, public health, you know, human capacity development, and all the infrastructure developments that we need in order to make ourselves more competitive. And so all of the projected spending that we were planning to do on these critical areas had to be diverted for COVID relief and COVID response and COVID recovery and resilience building, including all of the spending that we had planned to do with respect to adaptation. So there is a direct link with the pandemic. These countries, if you add up all the SIDS and the least developed countries and the landlocked developing countries. There are 91 of them. And these vulnerable 91 countries are also highly exposed to external economic shocks. LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS have also suffered devastating impacts from the pandemic. Commodity price shocks, the collapse of tourism. I think of countries in the Caribbean and in the Pacific. Plummeting GDP. The figure for SIDS across the board, 38 SIDS, and the average in terms of GDP loss because of the pandemic is 9% of GDP, staggering amount. They've also experienced loss of export earnings and government revenues, precipitous declines in FDI, foreign direct investment, and in remittance flows. Increased debt servicing costs, and the credit ratings of many of these countries have taken a hit. So their recourse to more loans have come at a higher price than it was before. And all of this comes amid persistent and ongoing challenges in mobilizing resources. We're talking about countries, as I said, that are cash-strapped. So domestic resource mobilization is not an option for them. Many of these developing countries are not LDCs, they are middle-income countries. They have limited reliance on overseas development assistance. And so what they have to do is rely on external flows. And I just said to you that chief amongst those flows have been tourism and commodity prices and remittances. Those have all gone to ground. While all nations face heightened exposure to hazards, all of them, all of us, climate or otherwise, vulnerable nations, as we know, have lower coping capabilities and adaptive capacities. Simply put, they lack the means to respond and to recover. Consider that only 3% of people in the world's poorest countries are vaccinated. Now, that may not mean anything. I mean, you always have to juxtapose these statistics with what the prevailing rates are elsewhere. And I can tell you, 3% of the LDCs have been vaccinated. Juxtapose this against 70% of people that live in advanced economies in the developed, rich countries of the world. 70% of them have at least had one dose of the vaccine. You know, the World Bank estimated recently that 2.5% of this year's debt service payment by developing countries, which equals $28 billion, is enough. Just 2.5% of that debt service is enough to vaccinate 2 billion people in poor countries. That sort of brings these raw statistics to life. This is manifold evidence, in my estimation, of gross unfairness. And the same applies to the ability to provide economic stimulus packages. I refer to a statement by the UN Secretary General, which he made on Tuesday, that advanced economies are investing nearly 28% of their GDP into economic recovery. And for the LDCs, it is less than 2% of their GDP. And their GDP is obviously a much smaller number. The case for special attention, I think, is stronger now than ever before for the least developed, landlocked developing and small island developing states. The best available science is clear. It is stark. It is before us. It is that the risks are compounding and disasters are occurring through a combination of hazards. Sea level rise is coupled with storm surge, or increased temperature is coupled with drought and forest fires. The Warsaw International Mechanism is ideally suited for coordinating and catalyzing coherent efforts by donors, agencies, and other stakeholders in a position to assist developing countries in preparing for future risks. This includes having contingency measures in place in anticipation of when countries experience losses, despite any preventive measures that they take. We also need to have provisions in place for recovery, for reconstruction, rehabilitation, and restoration measures to minimize development setbacks in vulnerable countries. As parties embark on discussions to ramp up finance beyond 2025, I underline the importance of finding ways to channel the necessary finance for the management of these residual impacts. And it's not just about necessary finance, adequate finance, it's also about the ease by which countries can access those funds. This year's IPCC report was the first major review, as you know, of the science of climate change since 2013. That was the same year the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage was agreed. If we were at Code Amber in 2013, well, I dare say we are now at Code Red. And so I look forward to hearing about the progress that is being made here today on what should be a lifeline for many of the world's most vulnerable countries. We can but hope that it serves this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your remarks. And next, you have the floor. Ms. Hen, I hope I got that correctly. The floor is yours. Thank you. Please make her welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, Leanne, colleagues. I think the previous speakers, the Excellencies, have very expertly described what the climate crisis means for vulnerable countries. They brought in the science and concrete examples of our joint future, but with different capabilities to address these challenges in different countries and in different communities. And yes, of course, taking ambitious mitigation action fast is the best measure against the risks of climate change. But as the Excellencies have also pointed out, even if we are as fast and bold as we talk that we would be, we will not be fast enough to hinder that climate crisis, shocks, extreme weather events affect vulnerable groups. And therefore, we have to talk about losses and damages. We have to address the vulnerabilities of people around the world. We can look at Madagascar, just to name one example right now, and it's not about numbers, it's about people. It's about individuals and their lives and livelihoods at stake. And the Honorable Ambassador was speaking also about finance and support. Yes, Germany and others are providing support, but it's not efficient, effective, and targeted enough. And this is where the work of the Warsaw International Mechanism, WIM, acronyms, starts, and putting really the losses and damages that strike the most vulnerable at center stage. And Germany was very supportive of the WIM's work right from the beginning. We were a member of the WIM's Executive Committee of ExCom from its start in 2013 until 2019. And over the years, Germany and other European countries were trying to advance the agenda on losses and damage. And I just want to highlight a couple of also recent examples. On the one hand, regarding knowledge, the political agenda and policy change, we published this Monday, together with the OECD, a study on losses and damages from climate change. This study is putting losses and damages at center stage. We need to talk about it, not shy away from the discussion. And we hope to contribute to the COP, to the work of the new expert group on action and support with this study. But it's not only about knowledge, it's also about concrete support, about concrete action. And here I would like to give also a couple of examples. Germany co-launched the Inter-Resilience Global Partnership when climate risk insurance started being discussed increasingly around the year 2014. So we made it a priority during our G7 presidency in 2015 and also in 2017 when we had the G20 presidency. And together with now more than 110 partners, including, for example, France, Finland, the Netherlands, and the European Commission, we have evolved so many activities with the vision to secure 500 million people against the risks of climate-related disasters in the year of 2025. And alone in the last year, we already reached 140 million people. Or CRUISE. Germany develops and strengthens with CRUISE and other partners climate risk and early warning systems. This is a multi-donor initiative that focuses explicitly on the least developed countries and the SIDS. Or a global program together with GIZ to develop methods for comprehensive climate risk assessment, because we need to know the risk in order then to address this and to prepare. And this global program has contributed to the development of the WIM. And also we facilitate programs that deal with human mobility in the context of climate change. And since the last year, for example, New Zealand contributes to this program and advancing the work on voluntary planned relocation in Fiji. These are some of the examples of our activities, but like I said before, this is not enough. We have to do better jointly and do better and more. And I want to congratulate the WIM ExCom for this outreach event, where we can learn more about the activities. And even given the problems of the pandemic, 2 years after Madrid, the last 3 expert groups on slow onset events, non-economic losses, and action and support are finally established and fully functioning. And this is very important moving forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, Leanne, Germany is ready to continue our strong support for the WIM, and we are continuing to engage, not only within the UNFCCC, but also with ambitious programs that tackle resilience and address losses and damage. And we continue our support for the most vulnerable countries while pushing to reach our joint 1.5-degree goal. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies.
Thank you very much for your remarks. We also want to thank the other speakers for this section, and we do invite you to stay with us if you can, but we do appreciate that it's a very busy time, and if you're not able to stay, we appreciate the time you could be with us. At this time, I will now invite some of our ExCom champions, as we call them, for the different expert groups to join me on the podium. And in the interest of time, I will give a brief overview of some of the work that we have been doing. We do recognize that the issue of loss and damage could take us days and even weeks to discuss. But for this side event, we have around about 41 minutes left. So we hope to make very good use of the time. I will also say that I have another co-chair, Mr. Malcolm Ridout, who is unable to join us at this time, but I will do my best to represent both of us here today. This side event comes at a timely moment, with the ExCom having launched 3 new expert groups earlier this year. These are the expert groups on non-economic losses, which we call NELs, the expert group on slow onset events, or SOEs, and also the expert group on action and support, and we shorten that ASEG. Later today, we will have a chance to hear directly from members of these expert groups. As co-chair, I am pleased with this, as the expert groups play a fundamental role in contributing to the successful implementation of the WIM and future mandates with respect to loss and damage. As you might have seen entering the room, the WIM ExCom has developed a booklet titled Face to Face with the WIM. The booklet presents the profiles of all the members of the ExCom and the expert groups, showcasing the expertise that is available to us. It shows the catalytic potential of the WIM in mobilizing support for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. The booklet also reminds us of the diversity and the multidisciplinary nature of the expertise available. Whilst we're very proud of the range of expertise mobilized through the expert groups and showcased in the booklet, this is only a part of the larger community of practice being built around the WIM. The WIM roster of experts registers over 270 specialists who are ready to collaborate with the ExCom. Some of them worked with us for the policy brief on technologies for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage in coastal zones, and also the special journal issue on slow onset events, among other products. The WIM ExCom is also actively engaging national loss and damage contact points designated by interested parties. Most recently, which was in September to be specific, we did an outreach event titled Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage Executive Committee Outreach, moving forward in averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. And this was to increase the awareness at the national level. The event featured selected technical products and work undertaken through partnerships, and also gave an opportunity for highlighting the best available science in the work under the WIM. It also looked at strengthening the link with the IPCC, who presented on relevant key findings from its recently published work. Another recent result was highlighting the catalytic role of the ExCom in enhancing knowledge and mobilizing a broad community outside of the policy-relevant decision makers space, which was the special journal issue by Elsevier, and this was produced in October this year. So we continue looking also at the implementation of the plans of actions of our expert groups, while also reflecting on the communities of practice and expertise available to us. With that said, we now have just about 37 minutes to look at the expert group's work. And with that said, I will now be inviting the champions on the platform with me to speak very briefly on some of the activities that have been undertaken. I will give the opportunity to the 3 new expert groups, which we mentioned before, and we will also have reflections from the Task Force on Displacement, the TFD, as well as the Technical Expert Group on Comprehensive Risk Management, which were previously established and also implementing their plans of actions. So firstly, I will invite Ms. Perpetua, we call her Pepe, Latassi, one of the co-facilitators from the TFD, to speak, and we will thereafter invite other members of the TFD to provide brief reflections. So Pepe, the floor is yours. Yes, we ask that her mic also be turned on, please.
Yep. Thank you for the floor, Leanne. It is a pleasure to speak on behalf of the Task Force on Displacement, and we love acronym, so it's the TFD. The TFD is the oldest expert group of the ExCom, and it's currently comprises of 15 members, including 4 ExCom members serving as facilitators of the expert group. TFD also comprises a member of the Least Developed Countries Expert Group, the LEG, and a member of the Adaptation Committee among its membership. The TFD was the first thematic expert group to be established under the ExCom to develop recommendation in its first phase. The TFD developed recommendations for integrated approaches to avert, minimize, and address displacement related to the adverse impacts of climate change. Currently, in its second phase, the work of the TFD focuses more broadly on a strategic workstream D of the current 5-year rolling work plan of the ExCom, which aims to enhance cooperation and facilitation in relation to human mobility, including migration, displacement, and planned relocation. In particular, this strategic workstream focuses on better understanding the impacts of climate change on human mobility, disseminate and facilitate the uptake of the recommendations developed in the first phase, as well as facilitating stakeholder engagement for further action. Building on a wealth of experience and lessons learned over its years of operation, the TFD provided a set of inputs at ExCom 14 for consideration by the ExCom for inclusion in its recommendation to parties. The recommendations focused on TFD's thematic area of interest were based on the intersessional work of the TFD. Key elements of these recommendations range from acknowledges the inputs and contribution from member organizations and participants in the work of the TFD, to emphasize the need to base action and support on the best available science in combination with local knowledge and perspectives. TFD inputs also focus on the need to scale up action and support, including finance, for implementing integrated, effective, risk-informed approaches to avert, minimize, and address displacement related to the adverse effects of climate change, and encourage organizations, bodies, networks, and experts working on human mobility to join the Santiago network. TFD inputs have reflected the importance of cooperation of this expert group, calling on to ensure integrated approaches and policy coherence within and outside of the UNFCCC on human mobility in the context of climate change, and in supporting developing country parties in systematically preparing for and addressing displacement related to the adverse effects of climate change. TFD inputs also considered explicitly included outreach and engagement recommendations, encourages bodies, programs, and platforms under and outside of the work to work with the ExCom to raise awareness of the challenges and opportunities related to human mobility in the context of climate change, explicitly mentioning the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction from 2015 to 2030, and its associated global regional platforms, the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, and its associated International Migration Review Forum, the Global Compact on Refugees, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The work of the TFD during ExCom 14 could serve as the best practice example of how a fully mature expert group of the ExCom should operate, with clear recommendations based on intersessional work to be transmitted to the ExCom. Looking forward to engage in a discussion on identifying further opportunities for collaboration. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much for sharing. At this time, I will invite a brief 1 to 2 minute reflection from a member of the Task Force on Displacement. I'm checking. Yes, please, microphone number 1.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting the ILO to make a statement or intervention on behalf of the TFD as well, where we have been a member of. As you know, ILO is very concerned about many migrants who are forced to leave their communities, and when they do, they must do so through irregular routes where there is exploitation, abuse, and including human trafficking. So it's very important that at the same time, few countries recognize safe, orderly, and regular pathways for those migrants impacted by climate change, who may need to survive or to gain livelihoods for themselves and their families. And yet we know that the implementation of planned and well-managed labor migration policies can have a positive contribution on development and protection of those moving or being compelled to move due to climate change. Providing labor migration policies linked to climate responses, such as an adaptation planning, can reduce the risk of exploitation, allow migrant workers to contribute to business and economic growth in labor markets. And therefore, the ILO, together with its many UN sister agencies, partners in working with government to develop the appropriate policies and programs based on international labor standards that can incorporate, for example, green jobs and national and migrant workers, and we support a just transition to a green economy. For example, in the Pacific, we work with in Fiji and Samoa to support migrants, not only with moving, but also with finding employment or channeling them into productive work after they have migrated. And similar projects we've been doing with IGAT in the Horn of Africa. And really with our work, we seek to implement the WIM guidelines and put them into reality. And so help with in our work in co-leading UN network on migration and work stream and climate migration. So we stand ready to support countries in moving forward in this work. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And so we thank the Task Force on Displacement for the work and for providing the reflections here today. I will now invite my other ExCom colleague, Mr. Penehura Lafale, to speak as an expert or a champion for the slow onset events. The floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, kia ora tātou, greetings. Thank you, Madam Moderator, for giving me the floor. Let me start by saying it is a great honor and privilege to speak on behalf of the expert group on slow onset events, SOE. The expert group on SOE is one of the 3 new expert groups of the WIM ExCom. SOEs currently comprise 11 members, including 4 ExCom members serving as champions or facilitators of the expert group. The work of the expert group on SOE focuses on strategic work stream, bracket A, of the current 5-year rolling plan of the ExCom, which aims to enhance cooperation and facilitation in relation to slow onset events by both strengthening the understanding of slow onset events, as well as enhancing the capacity to address them, in particular at the regional and national levels. The BOA and work of the expert groups on SOE focuses on both the risks and impacts of slow onset events. Catalyzing a wide range of expertise on SOE is one of the fundamental goals of the expert groups. SOEs has recently opened a call for submission, which was closed in August 2021, for unique, innovative, and transformative policy-related ideas and solutions under the 3 thematic areas. First, glacier retreat, 2nd, sea level rise, and 3rd, salinization and desertification. This call was aimed at engaging a wide range of stakeholders using the WIM as a platform to identify and elevate solutions on SOEs across regions, states, and communities. While the focus was on innovation, the call also sought to identify existing solutions that hold promise for wider applications, and also those that could lead to significant positive outcomes when implemented at scale. This first call for submission could be also a potential model for future opportunities for engagement of a wide range of stakeholders, including from observer organizations and attending participants of this event and their network. In continuing to implement its program of action, or plan of action, SOE Expert Group welcomed the ongoing contribution of a wide range of stakeholders, ranging from academics to local practitioners. We will continue to convene expert meetings, develop scenarios and guidelines on practical actions, and provide technical advice and support on integrating consideration of impacts associated with slow onset events and applicable responses into national planning and policy-making processes. We will continue to seek and engage a diverse representation of experts, including on regional particularities, traditional knowledge, and local practices. Ladies and gentlemen, the SOE Expert Group looks forward to hearing your views and ideas on how we can work together to further identify opportunities for future collaboration. Ngā mihi nui, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Penehuro. At this time, I will now invite another of my ExCom champion colleagues, Ambassador Adao Suarez Barbosa. Please, we invite you now to speak on the expert group on non-economic losses.
Thank you very much, co-chair, but at the moment acting as facilitator, moderator, for giving me the opportunity. Excellencies and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. The expert group on non-economic losses, NELS, is one of the 3 newly launched expert groups of the ExCom. NELS currently comprise of 18 members, including 4 ExCom members, serving as champions or facilitator, members of the expert groups. So we are acting as a co-facilitator for this group. NELS also has a representative facilitative group of the local communities and indigenous people platforms, and a representative of least developed countries expert group, the LEG, in its membership. The expert group on non-economic loss enhances cooperation and facilitation in relation to non-economic losses under the strategic workstream B of the ExCom's 5-year rolling work plan, which aims to enhance cooperation and facilitation in relation to non-economic losses through enhancing data collection on, as well as knowledge and awareness of non-economic losses, facilitating their mainstreaming in measures at national level. Note that due to its thematic scope, collaboration with a wide range of partners, peers, and stakeholders is essential for NELS to be able to successfully implement its mandate activities. The activities of the plan of actions for these NELS are organized around 3 clusters. So first cluster is conducting a stock take of data, tools, and knowledge. And the second cluster is working on raising awareness and devising outreach and support strategies. And then third cluster is enhancing technical capacity and catalyzing support, including by developing technical guides. Collaboration with a diverse set of partners is crucial for activities under each of these clusters, especially for outreach and awareness raising, including developing targeted outreach and awareness raising materials tailored to the needs of different stakeholders profiled at the global, regional, subnational, and also local levels. It is highlighted that NELS seeks to strengthen its existing partnerships and welcomes new partnerships with relevant stakeholders engaged in work on non-economic losses at the global, regional, subnational, and local levels, and that its plan of actions clearly mandated the expert group to map potential partners working on non-economic losses. The plan of actions, or POA, also mandates the NELS to scope and prioritize regional and also national events and mobilize partners to collaborate with the expert group to identify and address capacity and support needs of developing countries in relation to assessing and addressing non-economic losses, building on identified gaps under this cluster. It is also noted that given the centrality of collaboration for the work mandated for the NELS by its plan of actions, NELS is very eager to explore ways to collaborate and engage with a wide range of stakeholders. With currently 18 members, NELS has already access to diverse expertise and a broad community of practice, but also hopes to further explore opportunities for engagement and hopes that the discussion with participants present today, especially this engaged in capacity building effort on the ground, will help to highlight new ways to collaborate and on the expert group's effort to identify capacity needs with a view to supporting the effort of developing countries to assess and also address non-economic losses we have put forward under our plan of actions. With that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Wow, where is the time going? We have 17 minutes and quite a number of speakers, so we will have to ask, please be as brief as you can. I will now invite Ms. Andrea Carmen, followed by Mr. Irfan from Yongo, to speak very briefly and to reflect. And we ask that, if possible, keep to 1 or so minute. Thank you.
I'm very honored to be representing the facilitative working group of the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples platform on the NELS. This is a very important collaboration, I think, both for the NELS and for the FWG, to bring the perspectives of Indigenous peoples into this dialogue. Needless to say, our communities, our ways of life, our cultures, our food systems, our knowledge systems, our sacred places have all been already devastated, but also continue to be threatened. And some, I think, from an Indigenous peoples point of view, and I represent North America Indigenous peoples on the facilitative working group, things like our traditional food systems based on our knowledge and ways of knowing can't be divided between economic and non-economic, cultural, spiritual, ceremonial losses. So this perspective we can bring in as we participate, and we hope that we'll be able to continue contributing to this important work from the perspective of Indigenous peoples around the world. Chokwe Utesia.
Thank you for being brief. Is Mr. Irfan Ula here. Yes, mic number 2. Yes, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So actually, I'm representing Yongo in the NELS, and I'm actually the youth voices in the whole process of non-economic losses and negotiation. And actually, our main work, which I'm also trying and striving to have, to highlight actually the shortcoming identified by youth in this whole NELS negotiation processes. And despite that, about the plan of action in the cluster which Yongo is working along with youth around the globe is to raise awareness, raising outreach and support strategy. We are Yongo are organizing different events like webinars, inviting experts from the different field on the topic of non-economic losses to somehow aware the young people and kind of trying to motivate them to do researches on the topic of the challenging topic of quantification of non-economic losses. So these are some of the main themes of work which Yongo is doing on this process, and actually also it's help to build the capacity of the young people, because young people are also not that much aware of this non-economic loss quantification process. So that's the work which we are doing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you as well. We will now move straight to our next expert group, and I'm joined on the podium by the champion, Yelena Milos. Please, the floor is yours. Action and support.
Thank you, Leanne. Good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues. I'll be short. So we are the Action and Support Expert Group, ASEG, acronyms again. We have 19 members ranging from very diverse backgrounds, including 4 ExCom members who facilitate the group, as well as relevant UNFCCC bodies on technology and capacity building. And our thanks goes to the experts who have joined. So thank you for your continuing input, and hope you continue to do so. Our work supports the strategic work stream E of the 5-year rolling work plan of the ExCom, which focuses on enhancing cooperation and facilitation on support, on action and support, including, of course, finance, capacity building, and technology. So we basically work to enable countries to undertake enhanced actions related to averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. So cooperating with a wide range of stakeholders is essential for our work. This, of course, includes working with the ExCom working groups, like the TFD or the slow onset events, to name a few, but also others. So we welcome input. Just briefly on our plan of action, this includes mapping of various sources of support that are available for loss and damage on the breadth of topics, which are quite wide-ranging. We are also zooming in to helping countries access green climate fund investments, as well as working on the effective implementation of risk transfer facilities and social protection schemes. So again, as I outlined, we really welcome relevant information from parties and other stakeholders to support the work on identifying lessons learned, areas of replication and scaling up. Again, I think the other point is also besides what we have, these concrete outputs, we are supposed to identify continuously areas of collaboration with relevant bodies inside the Convention and the Paris Agreement and outside. So we wanted to highlight that we are here to listen and to collaborate with as many stakeholders as possible on this important issue. And with that, thank you, Leanne.
Thank you as well. Oh, wow, we have 11 minutes left, but we still have one more expert group, and whilst we don't have a champion on the platform to speak, I will say perhaps I can represent the TEG CRM, but you won't be hearing from me. You will be hearing from some of our experts. So I will first invite Professor Martin van Aalst, Director of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Climate Center, to give some brief remarks.
Thank you, and you are representing that expert group on comprehensive risk management, and maybe appropriate that it doesn't even need to be on the stage because it's happening, right? It's one of those expert groups that is indeed, like many of you were aspiring from the start, very closely connected to practice that is happening around the world. I know a few of my colleagues will highlight a few other things, but I think one area where this has been happening is in the area of early warning and early action. So connecting information about extreme events that are coming, likely resulting in loss and damage, to reduce, hopefully, possibly even avert some of the loss and damage, but at least also be ready to respond faster when loss and damage occurs. We've seen a drastic move towards anticipatory financing, forecast-based financing in the humanitarian system. That has gone to scale in over 60 countries in the past 10 years. And it's been an area where the tech CRM has been focusing, has been making some analyses, looking at what could be used. I think one area where we're still seeing room for improvement, also connecting to the other expert groups, is then how to use information from risk assessments for that short-term preparedness, also for longer-term adaptation and risk management, including how to deal with longer-term challenges when these extremes get worse. Let me leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciate your reflections. Next, we will have Mr. Harjeet Singh, and he will be at microphone number 1 from the Climate Action Network. The floor is yours. Number 1, right there.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity. It's always great to connect with you all. And I'm Harjeet Singh, and I work with Climate Action Network, and I'm speaking on behalf of the group that work together, so ActionAid, DIE, Red Cross Climate Center, and with support from also Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. We have been engaging on the issue of social protection, and being part of the tech CRM, it really provides us an opportunity. And as you can hear the name of these organizations, we're working in scores of countries, bringing experiences from the ground. And this space is extremely useful in terms of bringing in inputs and insights from the academia, as well as practitioners who bring experiences and voices from the ground. And for us, we have worked together on the issue of social protection, which is extremely important in terms of tackling climate impacts and particularly minimizing and addressing loss and damage. And we have submitted a paper and where we have talked about how it needs to be seen as a policy, as a system, and it can work across all the thematic areas that you all have presented, be it slow onset events or non-economic losses, displacement, and so on. So this space provided us an opportunity, one, to collaborate and bring all our experiences together and to make sure that we are able to provide alternatives and solutions that can help this process, as well as countries and whether it's civil society or governments. It would be really great to continue with this collaboration in a manner that the knowledge that we are generating and this coordination that we have done also reaches countries and eventually the people who we are working for, people who are facing loss and damage now. So thank you very much, and it's an honor and pleasure to be part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harjeet. And last, certainly not least, Sanke, is he here? Ah, there he is. Mr. Sanke Kreft from the United Nations University. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Similar to my previous speakers, honored to represent the Tech CRM. I want to report on one activity that we actually did in collaboration with UNDRR. So you already heard about topics like social protection, also linking in the humanitarian communities. I think the group is also focusing on climate risk management in general, topics like climate risk analytics, but also forms of risk management like climate insurance and financial protection approaches. And the one event series I want to talk about focused actually on climate risk analytics. So we did 3 events at the regional climate weeks, looking at aspects, purpose of climate risk data, how can also especially vulnerable populations benefit from it, how can this be linked to adaptation planning, but also questions around governance of climate data, and facilitating this dialogue between practitioners from the regions and also some champions from the ExCom. We were able to actually distill a few written conclusions And we also made that available to the ExCom of the Warsaw International Mechanisms for its considerations for the report towards the COP. So just to see like a few of the activities, but it's only also a subset. And I want to also thank the group. It wasn't without challenges. COVID happened in these times, so we also had to readjust quite a bit on the way, but I think it's a vibrant group and we're happy to continue.
Great, thank you. Could we have a round of applause for all our speakers? Perhaps I may be a little biased, but I think that we are doing important work here. We have heard from the breadth of the expert groups, work that is planned or work that has been undertaken. And I believe that in the future, we certainly have more important work as well to continue. And we want to encourage all our champions, the current champions as well as the future ones, because we are aware that some of our ExCom members will be leaving us. We certainly want you to keep your partnership with us, and we certainly look forward to working with the new members that are to come. We have just about 4 minutes. So I will open the floor for 1 or 2 reflections, if we can keep them to 30 seconds or so. Do we have anyone wishing to take the floor to either ask a brief question or to make a comment? If you wish to do so, please. You can use either microphone, just let us know. Please use the microphone. So he will be using microphone number 1.
Hello, everybody. Colin McQuiston from Practical Action, also following the WIM ExCom through the Climate Action Network. I'd be very interested to learn about what Mr. Courtney highlighted at the beginning about the risk of bankruptcy in many of the nations, the fact that loss and damage is leading to economic stress. What is the work of the WIM ASEG, the Action Support expert group, doing to actually look at the risks that many of those nations face? And how is it thinking about mobilizing the finance that's going to be necessary to support those countries get back onto a track when risk is increasing? So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's a brief reflection that Yelena may want to speak to.
Should I speak? Or, oh, it's a... Well, Colin, thanks for that question. I think it's quite important. And the Action and Support Expert Group started working this year. We do have some sort of starting points, like from the risk transfer and the social protection aspects, but we want to also look at innovative finance. So I think the strength here from our members is that we do have think tanks, banks, development banks on board, NGOs, and that's a space that we should discuss. So currently we have not been looking at these macro financial issues that you mentioned, but it's probably going to be landing on our desk, so to speak. So I expect, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have 2 minutes left. So I will, at this point, start with the wrap-up. I would like to once again say thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming to this side event. I think without your participation, we would not be able to host this event. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Thanks also to our online audience. This was being streamed live, so we thank them as well, and perhaps those who in the future will watch the recording. We do hope it was very useful. I want to once again say thanks to the ExCom champions and also to all the members of the various expert groups. We really would not be able to be where we are and to have produced what we have so far and what is to come without your commitment and your participation. So we really want to thank you and to encourage you to continue to work with the ExCom in the future. Let me also put on record special thanks to the Secretariat team, Truthfully, we would not be here without them. We do appreciate all the effort, the sacrifice, and everything that went into not just preparing for this event, but really the work that we do as an ExCom and in the expert groups. So let's put on record our appreciation to the Secretariat for all their very hard work. Thank you, everyone. It has really been my pleasure to moderate the session today. I hope it was worth your time. And if you have not yet done so, there are booklets still available. Please keep one, pass one to a friend or colleague or in a library or something, but do make use of them. Continue to be safe. I would normally be wearing my mask, but I think it would have interrupted the microphone. But we hope that you will be safe and continue to have a safe COP. So thank you, and please also thank everyone for participating.